Hello and welcome. I am live from Pellam's Wasteland, and today I have another episode of Pellam's Wasteland Reads for you all, this time covering Black Empire by George S. Schuyler, which is a collection of essentially two parts of an extended serialized novel that was published in the 1930s. George Schuyler was an African American writer, a journalist, as well as a writer of pulp fiction stories, and published in a lot of black oriented magazines and newspapers and the like, of which there, of course, were not that many at the time. Talking about the time in this case being the 20s and 30s, but there were a couple. Unfortunately, apparently, the one that this story was published in, the microfilm, is really badly damaged and stuff, and so hard to find in the kind of textual evidence for precisely what was published at the time. But this is a Penguin publication of like I said, a two-part serialized novel. The first half called The Black Internationale, and the second half called The Black Empire. The first part of Black Internationale was originally published starting in late 1936, and then this whole thing was published in weekly installments through to mid to late 1938, um, which is an interesting thing because it sort of ties into, I guess you might say, the particular worldview of this story, because it comes from the very brief period where, um, you know, people sort of expected fascism to be the, like, for lack of a better term, kind of a definitive feature of future politics, that Mussolini's Italy, and Hitler's Nazi Germany and all of that sort of stuff, and some of the stuff going on in Romania and all the different things that, from our kind of historical perspective looking back, it seems like a very brief period, but within that brief period, people just sort of expected that that was going to go forward like that, which puts a really interesting kind of spin on the eventual sort of political discussion of this story, which is a kind of grand, sweeping pulp narrative, that includes a lot of different kind of elements seemingly influenced from other kind of pulp stories and science fiction in particular. But also the kind of adventure fiction that was published in a lot of places, and also some of the kind of sort of conspiracy or kind of proto spy thriller almost. There's a pulp character, Dr. Fu Manchu, from originally from a publication by a man named Sax Rohmer, who is a basically a racist caricature, and who exists to do these kind of shady anti-imperialist conspiracies, basically, um, and is a villain, a villain who is doing this kind of conspiratorial work behind the scenes to take down the various imperial powers. And this particular one, Black Empire, George Schuyler kind of takes that concept and transforms this idea of the kind of shadowy conspiracy put on by a figure like the Doctor, and it is Dr. Belcidus in this story, who is this intelligent and completely implacable and unmerciful, um, sort of titanic figure within this revolution, basically. And he has set up this whole immense conspiracy, and he's doing all these different things. They're developing new types of aircraft, and they're pioneering new agricultural systems, and they're also running a really quite massive secret crime operation. They're basically stealing from various people and stealing gold and jewels and melting down gold and creating a reserve of wealth that way. And they eventually end up um, going all the way to putting together a paramilitary force, largely of black veterans of the First World War, American black veterans. Um, and they train them up and go off to Liberia in order to start the Black Empire. And the story only gets crazier from there. And it is this kind of very, very fast paced and fascinating pulp narrative of all of these different kind of adventure elements. There's some really great kind of aircraft adventure stuff that was, of course, really popular at the time. Aircraft being a fairly new technology, of course, in the 30s, and the world being really fascinated by the stuff with like Amelia Earhart and Charles Lindbergh and all of that sort of stuff. And so this idea of the adventure of aviation is really present in this story in a super fun way, and I really loved that stuff. And then there's also this kind of um, immense sort of world transforming political shift that is a central part of this story. And I don't want to get too much into what actually happens because it is a fun, very fast moving plot with a lot of really awesome things going on, really exciting and interesting, and such a really unique story from this period, and kind of something that um ties into so much of the sort of expectations as well as fears in that period of the late 30s. um the sort of idea of the various tensions, especially in Europe, between the essentially what would become the Axis and the Allies, as well as some of the kind of considerations of this sort of later period of imperialism, the idea of the transformation kind of after the First World War of these kind of immense colonial empires that are sort of on their way out but have not collapsed. You don't have all of the kind of independent states in especially in sub-Saharan Africa that you end up with after the Second World War, over the course of decolonization that happens after that. And so you have this kind of uh, strange and particular period, all being shaped by Dr. Belsidus and his secretary, who's our protagonist, Carl Slater, and Carl's girlfriend and eventually wife, Patricia Givens, who is a aviatrix, as she is called, a top pilot, and also a kind of manager of air forces and things like that too. Um, and all these, you know, characters, these scientists and engineers that have been recruited by Dr. Belsidus to um, transform the world, basically, and theologians and different, kind of political analysts and all of these different characters who have been kind of gathered together into this anti-imperialist conspiracy to create the Black Empire of the title, um, which is really really fun and interesting, and so thoroughly unlike so much of the other pulp stuff in sort of a kind of ultimate thematic worldview, while maintaining so much of the fun kind of pulpy adventure pacing and the excitement of the story and all that sort of stuff that is so attractive about all that period pulp stuff. So yeah, this one I really liked. this one a whole lot, and I recommend you check it out. This particular version is the Penguin Classics one is the one that I read, and it combines all of both halves of the story together. There's a another modern publication, I think from Northeastern University. I don't remember for certain, but that sounds right from their press. That apparently is harder to find. But this one, yeah, it's the whole thing, both parts, and then a great set of appendices with a number of different kind of other things to read for sort of further research if you're interested in some of the stuff in here. There's also, so in the novelized version, in the main text, it doesn't include any of the publication titles, what each section was titled at the time of publication in the newspaper where it was being serialized. But that's in the appendices also, if you're interested in seeing kind of how a lot of this material was originally presented to readers at the time reading it in the newspaper. That's a closer presentation to that is also an interesting detail to add to this particular story. So, yeah, Black Empire, George Schuyler, go check it out if it sounds interesting to you. Um, if you've read Black Empire or any other George Schuyler or anything else related to this, feel free to leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I've been live from Pellam's Wasteland, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.